This is part 2 of my conversation with Hunter Muse. We're talking about Amy Wallace, the partner of Castaneda, Carlos.
Ship doesn't need no anchor, my crew doesn't need no rest, my life doesn't need no other, there's a rock inside my...
Well, how much do you think that Amy's behaviours, such as the example about her getting men to sleep with her as a way, to give them freedom, or tricking them in that way, that seems like something she was copying from Castaneda himself. So do you think that that's true of some of these other very neurotic behaviours? Because that's the picture she paints in her book anyway, is that there was a kind of systematized power, a hierarchy which involved this kind of sneaky, manipulative, cruel, sexually exploitative behavior in the whole group.
I think, Jason, it's a really romantic perception and viewpoint, but Amy was a drug addict. Amy went to Whole Foods and went into the vitamin aisle and stole $1,500 worth of vitamins. Because she was drugged out of her mind. She drove her car down Beverly Hills and sideswiped a whole line of cars because she was so fucked up on Valium that she got into this horrible wreck. Now, all of these things were drug related. It wasn't Castaneda related.
Well, Castaneda chose her though, didn't he? Well,
he chose powerful women that had money. He chose powerful people. He wasn't hanging around with beggars and schlubs. Everyone that he was around was a power player in Hollywood, a power player in the literary world. Those were the types of people that he liked, the people that he considered to have a lot of energy. Now, he admonished Amy all the time because Amy was 17 when he met her, and so she was a very young, innocent girl then, and then she went into this world of these pharmaceuticals, and he hated it. He wouldn't have sex with her when she was taking Prozac because he said that it would affect his energy to be intimate with her. So I think that it's easy to blame someone for indoctrinating you and for taking advantage of you, but ultimately the onus is on you how far you take that and what you do with that. And I think that she had her own mental issues, she had her own physical issues, and so she used those things as a way to cover up or to mask her pain and her upset about his behavior and the things that he was doing, because he was very sexual, and he was having multiple affairs and with multiple women. And as evolved as we would like to think we are, even in this sorceric world, there was still jealousy and there was that hierarchy, and he would pit people against each other. And so I think she very much fed into that whole ego thing of wanting to be the chosen one and wanting to be the picked one. And so when he said, "You're my wife," and he would manipulate her in these ways, she bought into it. She wanted that. So at the end, when he didn't give her the rights to his books, that he gave it to this woman that he had just literally met at a seminar, I think that affected her. It was like, hey, I've been around here for 30 plus years, and you're choosing this chick out of the audience and giving her everything. So I know that from a very male-female, jealousy, power struggle way, I know that she was very affected by that. And it really backed up on her.
So was she was around for 30 years then, from 17 on?
Yeah. I mean, on and off.
On and off, wasn't it? Yeah. And how old was she when she became his official wife, officially, in quotes?
Oh, God. I mean, probably 20 years into them knowing each other. I mean, it was a while.
Right. So probably only 10 years that she was fully in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still, I mean, it doesn't speak well for Castaneda. I just see I've gone out of focus. I've been out of focus. Doesn't speak well for Castaneda as this great narwhal that, you know, one of his chosen wives and witches is such a terrible mess. Does it?
Yeah, and an embarrassment. And he would bring it out, you know, at these Sunday meetings. He would call these people out. He said at one of them, "You're all masturbators." You know, he was very harsh and very hard in his criticism. He did not like fat people. He had his own sexual proclivities and things that he liked. And I think those very much overshadowed maybe what was really going on. It was like he chose people that looked very boyish. They looked like young boys. And he had them all cut their hair in this very short way. That was this very kind of androgynous way. And so that says something about who he was and what he was attracting and the types of women that he was trying to attract. And so I think that had a lot to do with her sabotaging behavior, because she would then get heavy. She would be taking Prozac, and Prozac makes you very puffy. And so he would admonish her and kick her out of the class. So it was this constant thing of trying to keep in favor, trying to be one of the people in that inner circle. And so what does that do if you have one man? And they said this at a seminar, which was amazing. They said, you know, you can take 2 PhD professors, 2 women, and put them in a room with a homeless man, and within a half an hour, they'll be fighting for this guy's attention. So if they have that attitude about women, you know, that kind of shows you and informs you what the energy is, that they're doing that. They're using women's egos and their own narcissism against them to, you know, get more power, to get more money, to get more influence. You know, I don't know if Amy ever gave him any money, but I know she definitely helped him to make money. I know that she definitely introduced him to people in her world and helped to expand his world. So, you know, I think that there's this merchant mentality that was still very prevalent in her mind. Like, I gave you everything. I gave you all my stuff. I gave away my animals. Now, what do I get in return? You die. And now I'm here left mourning and crazy, you know? So I think that had a lot to do with her relationship, was that the people around her, she was very close with Carrie Fisher. The people around her who also had drug addiction issues that are in the Hollywood elite, those people reinforced that stuff. So it's always easy to go to a psychiatrist and get more pills. It's always easy to go to a cocktail party with a bunch of other celebrities and, you know, speak your woes and be really, have that really enforced. And so I think that was one of the things that got her, was that she didn't, by her own admission, she didn't do the work. She was put in this very connected position and didn't take that to the next level and really try to do something with it. It was like she wanted the magic to just happen to her. And that's not really the world that he was selling.
Well, you say that she didn't do the work, but I mean, presumably Castaneda did the work, if anyone did, and it didn't seem like it served him that well.
I know, Jason. I mean, when people asked in the seminar, they said, "Where's Don Juan?" And they said, "We don't know." And then someone said, Florinda said, "We think he's trapped in the second attention. Like he's just in another layer of the onion." Well, how is that a fucking sales pitch for freedom if the old Nagual didn't even took the leap and didn't even make it? If Carlos took the leap and didn't even make it? Again, like, as we're all going to these seminars, people are asking, well, what chance do I have? Like, do I really have a chance to do this? And they would shrug and go, well, you know, we don't know. You can try, but there's no guarantee. And then people would say, well, why should we do this? And they would always say, well, for the hell of it.
Is there a reason you haven't read Amy's book? Is it just you haven't got around to it?
I think, I really love Amy, and it was a very tumultuous time in my life because I was dealing with mourning the loss of my teacher, and I was suddenly had this kind of cold water thrown in my face of the dark underbelly of what was really going on. And I think that it started to tarnish the way that I approached his work, and it made me feel really sad because I felt like I feel like she's missing the point because she's trying to get something out of this person without really putting the energy in to do what he claims he's doing. But I also felt like it was such gibberish at the time that I was initially involved with it that I just didn't want to get lost in her spiral. I was just like, I don't want anything to do with it. I have read the first 90 pages of it. I've investigated it online since I knew that you and I were going to talk. And I would like to read it because she is someone that I do dearly love. I think that people are very complicated, and when someone dies, it's the honorable thing is not to deify them. I think the honorable thing is to really see them as a fully fleshed out person with all their flaws and all of their character nuances. And so I've tried to really, in honor of her, I've tried to do that. And I see her life in many ways as a cautionary tale. So I'm interested in reading the book, but I don't think that I'm going to get anything out of it that I didn't already know in the time. I think whoever has helped her has probably tightened it up and put it in a concise way and in a terse enough way that it is a decent read, but I don't know how much of that is opinion and how much of that is actually fact. So, I'm curious, but again, it's like I still grieve for her. I'm sad that she died at such a young age. I'm sad she died in the way that she died. I think it's a fucking waste. I think pharmaceuticals are the fucking devil. And I think that she got caught in an eddy that she couldn't get out of, and of her own making. It was of her own making. And so that's where the sadness comes in. And I feel like the onus and the responsibility is on her. But I am curious. To be honest, I am curious. I would love to see what it ended up being.
Well, certainly, I mean, it would be hard in a case like Amy to separate, her familial traumas from whatever Carlos, I would say, was exploiting, but anyway, that he was mirroring in some way. Like, when a person has very formative traumas, they unconsciously reenact them by finding partners that will recreate the situations that originally traumatized them. So I don't know hardly anything about Amy Wallace's childhood, although she writes about it a little bit in the book. But it's clear that she did grow up in a very dysfunctional family. I don't know if there was a sexual abuse or how profound it was, but based on how badly she ended up, it was probably quite severe. So certainly it would be impossible to separate the causal factors of the past and then the present or the later part of her life with Castaneda. So I don't think it's either or, as in, either she was responsible for her own destruction because she couldn't resolve her own trauma, or Castaneda was. I think there can be an unholy complicity there between it's like that saying, "My teeth fit your wound," or something about Castaneda's particular mode of seeking power and exploiting power that seems to have interlocked with Amy Wallace's own trauma. That's my and all of the women. I think the only woman in that group that did not have early childhood trauma was Florinda Donner. Every single one of them had some really intense relationship or issue with their parents, with their families. Amy Wallace did experience sexual abuse at the hand of her mother. They all had stories that were
really, really traumatic in many instances. And I think that you're 100% right, is that makes you, there's a symbiotic relationship between predator and prey. And so it's very easy for someone like Castaneda to be able to pick women out who are vulnerable, sexually vulnerable or emotionally or psychically vulnerable, and be able to exploit that. Now, somewhere in that relationship, it's like, I've heard people talk about sadomasochistic relationships, and the idea is that the sadist is the one who's in charge, but the reality is that the masochist is the one who's in charge, because they're the ones that's setting the limit. So that's where the symbiotic connection happens, is that you have to be vulnerable enough to accept that kind of role as a victim and really seek someone out who has a predatory nature. And one of the reasons, in my own therapy, I've talked to my therapist about it, like, why do women have rape fantasies? Why do women have these power exchanges with men? And one of the reasons is that in role playing, you want to have control of that. So if you're choosing a partner, like if she's choosing a daddy figure like Carlos, and she's playing this role of daddy child and this weird incestuous thing with them, she's doing that so that she has control in that relationship. But the reality is that he really has control, because he's outwitting and outsmarting and has more energy than her. And so he's really manifesting and manufacturing that in a way that serves his ego and his need. And she becomes just another quote unquote victim of that exchange. So I do believe that there's definitely an element of that, and that people who go into these worlds have dissociative disorders, are able to bifurcate their brains and, take these other characters or these other personalities on to fit the situation that they're in. And so if you're a predator, then you're going to seek people out who can do that. And then if you have multiple sexual partners with multiple women, and these women start to get jealous of each other, then you can play off of that and say, well, that's your ego. This is your ego. And so make it about them, and where this woman then feels dehumanized because, oh, well, I'm just a stupid girl like every other girl that's jealous of her man, instead of saying, no, that's accurate. Like, it's okay to be jealous, and it's okay to feel like you don't want your man to be with 10 other women or give all your jewelry away to another one of his lovers. Like, that's okay to have those feelings, but he exploited that.
Do you think that was part of a sorcerer's rationale, as in, I'm going to help you lose your self-importance by beating at your ego and basically behaving in very manipulative and cruel ways, with the rationale that this is for your own good, right?
Of course, and of course you're choosing people who have wealth. So you're choosing people who have money to take from them. You're choosing women who have jewelry to take from them, and then saying, oh, that's your ego that's attached to that brooch that was your great grandmother's. It's like, okay, maybe that's my ego, but is it your job to help me destroy my ego? Isn't that something that I should be doing on my own? Because if you've taken something from me, I haven't really learned the lesson.
That's right. It doesn't work. It has the opposite effect.
Exactly. And it had the opposite effect on her. She cried. I saw her for hours weeping over her cats. She loved these cats. And he said, these cats are vampirically, parasitically on you. You got to get rid of these things, And so that destroyed her. And it's not like, oh, poor baby me. It was like, this is something that she was really attached to, that she was still attached to even after she gave them away. So whatever he was trying to do didn't work. It didn't stick.
Unless he was trying to do something sinister.
Without a reason. on the night sky. And if you will be mine, wake up when the rain from your cup. 'Cause I don't care, will I let you down? Will I let you down? What took so long? What took so long? What took so long?
Well, as an outsider, I found Amy Wallace's book was almost like the capstone on all the other books in a
Right.
certain sense, and I've even toyed with the possibility that Castaneda, at some level, not that he would have been aware of her book, he might have been, but that he might have been aware that the way that he was going to leave his legacy was with this very tragic finale. Essentially, I mean, one can even see the trajectory of Castaneda within the context of his own teachings, as in he failed, he was defeated by the third enemy of the man of knowledge, power. He became a cruel, capricious man. It's in there. It's consistent with the teachings. So there's even the possibility that there was some integrity in the way that I'm not going to say he allowed it to play out the way he did, because I have no idea, but the way that we've received it anyway, finally, like for me, Amy Wallace's book was a necessary appendix to all the other books, and because I don't know how much is true in any of the Castaneda books, and Amy Wallace's ditto, but at least it's a little closer to things that can be checked and referenced, as compared to these tales of power in Mexico, which actually don't hold up to scrutiny, right?
Exactly. And that's where I think that this insidious idea that somehow there was a greater force involved comes into play for me, because again, it was like he had been in the shadows for decades. Like, once DeMille wrote this book and his book had been debunked and he had really been exposed, he was still given a doctorate. So somehow something was being covered up at UCLA. Somehow somebody knew that what he was claiming was fabricated, and they still went great guns with it. They still went forward with it. And that's what makes it feel like it was a grand experiment, because it was like, okay, here we are in the 60s, 70s. We have this movement where, people are doing these mind expanding drugs. The world that we live in is in this very tumultuous state right now. So we kind of need a guru. We kind of need some magic to believe in. And let's just let this play out and see where it lands. And so he was in obscurity for decades before these seminars started to happen and another wave of his books started to come out. And I think it was almost like, all right, well, we'll throw this out there. We'll give these talks at the Phoenix bookstore. We'll see if people are interested. We'll slowly, market these seminars. We'll get the word out there. We'll see if anyone takes the bait. And so many people around the world were interested and still, sparked up, and we're like, okay, well, where is it? Where can we go? Where can we get this knowledge? That it was like, okay, well, we can sell this. Like, we have an opportunity here to sell this, so let's do it. And so I think that was the thing that reignited all of it. He was, some of these books are in the 17th, 18th print. So it's not like the books ever stopped selling. He had that going for him. But now it's like, let's take it to the world stage. Let's throw ourselves out there. Let's see if people will come to these seminars. If we can get 400 people to show up at $400 a pop, let's do a weekend in Maui and charge $1,200 and see if people will show up. And people came in droves. They came. There were waiting lists to go to some seminars because they were so full. So I think that was the thing that started the machine going, and he needed these elements of people in Hollywood that legitimized him and introduced him to the right people and kept him at the right parties. And he just took that and created a manufactured industry out of it. But I don't, honestly, Jason, I don't think he did it alone. I really don't. I would urge you to read Margaret Runyan's book, his first wife's book, who talks about being with him in the period before Don Juan appears in his life and the period when Don Juan appears in his life. And there's just some sketchy timeline stuff that goes on there where he claims he was somewhere where he was actually in Los Angeles with her, so I would venture to guess that there was some other force involved that was not Don Juan that helped him to keep this mythos going and to really manufacture that mythos.
Well, let's get to Hollywood then, finally. Symbolically fitting in terms of the creation of mythos, and you're saying that he did seem to move in those circles somewhat. The only one I know about is this Bruce Wagner, who I didn't realize. I just rewatched Map to the Stars, the Cronenberg movie, because of this book I've just finished about Hollywood, so I figured I should just see what Hollywood's saying about itself. It is a dark and quite interesting movie, but anyway, so I looked, who's this Bruce Wagner? I looked him up, and then I found out he was part of the circle. So what do you know about his participation? Was he there in those early days at the Phoenix Bookshop, or when did Bruce Wagner come aboard?
Apparently, well, if you go on to sustainedaction.org, in some of the Sunday talks, Carlos talks about Bruce and how he first met Bruce. Apparently, there was a woman who was involved in Hollywood that invited Carlos to a party that Oliver Stone was at, and Bruce was at that party as well. And so I think that was the entree to Bruce and Carlos having a connection. I know that Bruce absolutely loved and adored Carlos. He was one of the men that Carlos called the elements, which were the male counterparts to the Chocmules that were teachers at the Tensegrity seminars. So he was actually a teacher at the seminars. Now, he's a very striking man. And to me, in his own weird way, a very attractive man. He has hair on his ears. He's a very hairy person. He has a very expressive, almost animated type of a face. So I was immediately attracted to him when I saw him at one of the seminars. And he was always very cordial to me. We would talk. He was a writer, and I'm also a writer, so we had that in common. And at one point I was expressing this idea that I had, this film idea that I had, and he told me, "This is so bizarre that you're telling me this, because I have a friend who wrote a very similar script, a man who wrote a very similar script about the exact same subject, and it had the same name." So he was immediately, there was some energy there between us, like, this is so weird that you're telling me about the script you've written, and I know someone who's written the same story.
What was the subject?
When I was in California, when I moved to California, and I was desperate for a job, I was trying to find some work in Los Angeles because I wanted to stay. I wanted to continue to go to the seminars. I still wanted to be a part of this whole situation. I had just moved there, And so I needed money, and I answered an ad in the LA Weekly, in the back page of the LA Weekly, and it said, hostess, $600 a week. I was like, hostess? Like, what does that mean? And I'm thinking like, oh, it's a little jazz club, and you seat people at tables. Like, I had this very romantic idea of what that meant. Well, what hostess was a throwback from the 30s and the 40s. They were taxi dancers. And so I found this club in downtown Los Angeles that was a taxi dancer club. It was a diamond dance hall. So women had numbers. There was a line of couches that the women sat on, and on the other side of the room there were men, and men would pick women and ask the women to dance. And you were paid $20 an hour to dance with men. Well, dancing was a cover for some level of sexual contact, whether it be the girlfriend experience where this lonely guy would come in and you would pretend like you were on a date and sit on a couch together, all the way up to people having full-blown intercourse in this club. And this club had been around since the 30s in downtown Los Angeles. So I wrote a script about my experience of working in this club and all these different types of men that I had these experiences with. Now, Bruce knew this man who had been a guest at one of these clubs, and he wrote about his experiences of dancing with these women. So that was really the glue that bonded us together, was that I had been a dancer and this guy had been a customer at one of these clubs, and Bruce was just blown away that A, I knew what it was, and B, that I'd actually worked there. So that was the beginning of our exchanges and our relationship. But of course we were never intimate, but I just mean relating to him in these seminars and in these events. So he was very close to Carlos. As I said, he was someone who introduced Carlos into the Hollywood world. Now, there were other people in Hollywood. There was a famous agent, Tracy Kramer, who was also called a quote-unquote element, who was one of the teachers. And again, all the people pretty much that were in the hierarchy of this group were somehow very well connected in whatever industry they were in, or they had a wealth. They were powerful people. They had money. And so Tracy was one of those people. Bruce was one of those people. There were other people that were kind of on the periphery, but also involved in the Hollywood world. When I went to the women's seminar, I saw famous actresses there, and there was a famous model there, a Victoria's Secret model named Suzanne Lanza, and she was at the women's seminar. And so I just found it so interesting that, again, he wasn't trying to get like the homeless dude on the street and give the homeless dude on the street the knowledge. It was like, no, I want the elite. I want the people who are well connected. I want people who have money. Those are the people that I'm selling this system to. And I just always thought that was, very unchristian, because, Christianity is really about healing the poor and the meek shall inherit the earth, and really taking and having compassion and really helping people that are indigent or don't necessarily have the same shot as everyone else. This was the opposite of that. It was like, no, I want to hang out with the upper echelon of people. Those are the people that I'm trying to feed this knowledge to. And so those were the people that he was attracted to and he was trying to surround himself by.
And how close was Bruce to Carlos then, in your opinion?
He was extremely close. They spent a lot of time together, and Bruce is on, he talks, there's a couple of different clips you can see on YouTube. If you don't know where they are, I'll send you links of Bruce talking about his time with Castaneda. And there's a very deep love that you can see that Bruce has for Carlos. And I think that now Bruce was also married to Carol Tiggs. He married again. I know that some of these marriages could not have been legal because there was no divorce papers from other relationships. So Tracy Kramer married Florinda Donner. Bruce married Carol Tiggs. Like
Wait, Tracy, there was two women got married. Is that? Oh, Tracy was a woman, yeah?
Tracy Kramer's a man.
That's a man, okay.
He later became Julius, but his name in the Hollywood world is Tracy Kramer, and he's apparently a very powerful agent. There were people that were involved in lots of different animation. There were people in all different areas of the Hollywood system that were going to these seminars. And again, getting into the group or getting into getting kind of closer to the center, or getting closer to Carlos than the average person would, because they had influence and they had power. And that's the thing that he was attracted to, was powerful people.
And did you see Bruce after Carlos died?
I've seen him again on YouTube. I've seen him, and I saw him somewhere. I've run into him a couple of times in like random weird places.
Do you know what his attitude is post Carlos's death?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He's still part of Clear Green. He's still pumping and promoting the seminars.
He's a true believer then.
Absolutely.
And you said you watched Map to the Stars.
Yes.
So did you see any obvious parallels between?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, the John Cusack character, when he's doing all that body work on Julianne Moore, and he's tapping the back of her thighs, and he says, "This is where you hold your personal history."
Right.
This was a big part of Carlos's thing, was one of the reasons that we were doing these movements. Like I said, like, he was a fattist. He didn't like fat people. And he said that you had to be very thin, like rail thin, in order to make this leap, to make this jump. So that beating on the thighs and rubbing, all of that stuff, that was part of what I would call an active recapitulation. So what you're trying to do is you're hitting certain points, almost like Rolfing. You're hitting certain points of the body to release energy and tension that you feel is enmeshed and tied into the fibers of that part of your luminous egg. And so that beating that he was doing, and then she freaks out and is hysterically crying and has this physical experience after she has that massage, that was part of it.
Well, the John Cusack character, for a healer, is not somebody I would want to get within 10 yards of me, right? He turns out to be a very despicable, sociopathic character.
Yeah, I mean, and that's very consistent with this kind of duality that goes on in that world. Like, do what I say, but not what I do. So it's like he's trying to present himself. Carlos said once, he was talking about charity and how people who give charity or do charitable things, they actually feel elevated to the person that they're helping. So someone who's a healer or somehow thinks that they're living this charitable life actually feels like they have their ego says, well, I'm better than you, and that's why I have the ability to do this. When I went into the healing arts, because all the people that were close to Carlos went to Yosan, which is the Chinese medicine school in Los Angeles. So he had them practicing Chinese medicine. A lot of people went into massage. They were quote unquote healers. A lot of the people that were in the group went on to do these types of jobs. And so, something that was interesting to me about that was, again, the idea was there's this hierarchy. So this person, my doctor, was one of the teachers, Miles Reed. He's also in the group. He's still, he's actually not part of the group anymore. He splintered off, and he and his wife, who was also a teacher, have gone on and they're doing their own thing now. But what I realized is that they have this attitude of like, they have more energy, they are more tuned in, their energy is cleaner, so they're able to heal and help people. Well, when I went into the sex therapy world and I was a sexual surrogate, what I realized very quickly in doing any kind of healing work with men was that I wasn't healing anybody. This is all you. When you go into a therapeutic situation, if you go see a doctor, if you go get a massage, if you go to a spiritual healer, what that person really should be doing is creating a sacred space for you to do your own work. It's not that that person's doing something to you. It's just that they're vibrating at a high enough level where they can hold space for you to work through your own shit. So I realized that that wasn't what was happening in this situation. They were, like my doctor, for example, was doing things specifically to me that had been instructed through Yosan, through Chinese medicine, or through Carlos's work. So it was another way of indoctrinating me into the belief system. Like, here's this ancient tincture that Taisha made. I'm going to give this to you, and that's going to heal you. So it's like, oh, I've been given the magic elixir from this ancient line of Naguals, this secret recipe. Well, come to find out, the secret recipe was taking rosemary and steaming it in water, boiling it in water, and taking that water, and then you were using that in a bath to allegedly remove the luminous worms that men put inside women. Right. So the magic isn't in that tincture or that method, it's in your belief in that thing. It could have been soap and water that they said, oh, here's this magical formula and you're going to wash your body with it and that's going to lift your energy. So if I believe that, then it is the placebo effect. It's going to work because I've completely been indoctrinated in something and I believe heart and soul that that thing, that person is smarter, more tuned in, more elevated than I am. So of course, whatever they're going to give me is going to be magical and it's going to work.
So yeah, let's go back to Bruce, and specifically maps to the stars, the parallels with Castaneda. So you mentioned that particular trauma release method. What about the because it's a very dark film. There's very little in there that isn't dark, and I was wondering also about the relationship in that film between the brother and the sister, and how they both have this suicide pact at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, they get married, so there's an incestuous relationship that ends in suicide. Do you see any parallels?
Two incestuous relationships. So we have the parents that are brother and sister, and now we have the children that are brother and sister that are also in love with each other.
Right. Do you see any parallels there with...
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's really weird to say that this child, that you were a grown man and that you brought a child back from the second intention, a 7-year-old, and that you then later adopted her as your daughter and then later married her. I think that's a little fucking weird.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of weird in there. We'd have to pick it all apart, wouldn't we? So first of all, he's claiming this was Nuri was the name?
Yes.
Nuri?
Patty Parton is her legal name.
And the Blue Scout is the magical designation.
Yes.
This is written about in The Art of Dreaming,
Yes.
I think. So he's claiming that this person actually isn't an ordinary human being, but that came out of the inorganic realm.
Yes.
And that took the form of a 7-year-old child.
Yes.
And that then he adopted it, and then later he married her.
Yes.
Right.
And they were lovers.
Right. So, boy, oh boy. I mean, we're not going to be able to unpack that in 20 minutes, are we? But, I mean, just makes you wonder, what the actual reality is hidden behind that magical, narrative.
She has a personal history. She has brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
She has a life that is been corroborated, that does not at all fall in line with her being this magical being from the second intention. So, there in and of itself, he's manufactured this story that is consistent with his books, that creates this mythos that, if you start to peel the layers back of that, is so fucking disturbing and so creepy because it's not real. It's not real. I don't care. Like, she has parents. She has sisters who know her life. There's photos of her from her high school yearbook.
Is it possible that he did encounter her at the age of 7, though? That part's real?
No.
Yeah.
No, the time doesn't mash up.
Right. So anyway, as I say, because that's a whole can of worms unto itself. So let's bring it back to the Bruce Wagner's can of worms, the fiction of a fiction. I mean, if he is, do you think he is? How much do you think he's basing that narrative on his experiences with Castaneda? And if so, what's he trying to do there? Because it doesn't seem like what he's describing now. There's nothing appealing or attractive or positive or healing about it at all. It's just a dark, fucked up.
I know. And well, see, this is the thing, is that you're dealing with a demonic, dark, very evil world. The Hollywood system is enmeshed with some very twisted, narcissistic, egomaniacal people, sociopaths. I mean, these people are fucking dangerous, okay? And I think what the movie said to me was, this is what I got out of it. My daddy left me, my daddy abandoned me, and all I see is darkness now. Because every character, there's not one redeeming person in that entire film. Nobody. And if you look, Bruce is in the movie.
Oh, yeah?
He's the limousine driver who opens the door. He's the usher. He's the usher who opens the door and gets the girl into the limousine.
The daughter,
The car. The car. He's standing next to the car, and he opens the door, and the girl gets inside the car.
This is at the beginning of the movie?
Yes.
Right, okay.
So the metaphor to me is that he was the usher in the store. In the film, he's the usher, but he was also the usher into that world, into the Hollywood world. Like he's bringing people behind this velvet curtain. He's showing people into the film set world, like showing this dark, creepy, fucked up system that these people are all working and living in, and everything on the surface looks beautiful and perfect, but what lies beneath that, just one layer beneath that, is evil. There's not one fucking redeeming quality to any of that stuff. I think the Julianne Moore character is a mishmash of a lot of different women, famous actresses that he knows in Hollywood, and the main one I would say would probably be Carrie Fisher, because he and Carrie Fisher were extremely close.
She's in the movie.
And she's in the movie.
Yeah.
So I think that, but she's too old to play the Julianne Moore character, to play herself.
But she's the only character in the movie who's playing herself as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that his way of expressing her pain and expressing who she was and all of the insanity around her was to make the Julianne Moore character the main character of the film, and have Carrie make this cameo in it, because it's like he loves her, he wants her to be in the film, but she's too old to be the woman on the floor getting her legs rubbed, so it's like he chose someone who is an extremely famous actress, but kind of on the way out of being like the young ingenue, the young starlet. It's like she's kind of experiencing the golden years of her career. And that's very much what the film is about. It's very ageist, and it shows that very ageist nature of Hollywood, and it shows this really sick, insidious way that people, it's like they don't give a shit if this person's crazy or this person's lost their kid. They just want the fucking part. Like, that was so creepy. Like when the kid dies and suddenly she's given the role, like she's trying to pretend like she's not elated and over the moon, but she's absolutely just thrilled that this woman has had this tragedy befall her, and now she gets to play the role of her life.
It's the child sacrifice motif.
Yes.
For success in Hollywood.
Yes.
So how much do you feel that Bruce was really trying to expose something there that he found abhorrent, and how much, because it is a Hollywood movie, I mean, it's got the Hollywood stars and all the rest of it, although it was marginal. So how much is he really exposing something he finds abhorrent, and how much is he well, I mean, how much is he really part of that world, and how much has he embraced it, do you think?
Well, I wouldn't say that he's saying that it's abhorrent. I think I wouldn't say that it's braggadocious or that it's, but I think it's very self-congratulatory in its own way. I don't think that he's showing none of these people are heroic in any way. None of these people make any great sacrifices to get anywhere. Like, all they're doing is self-satisfying. They use the kid as much as they can. They fuck this kid up, this little boy up, and then they bring someone else into the situation, another young little kid. So, I mean, what that's showing is, like, you're never on top. You're never the one. There's always someone at your heels that's coming to take the piece of the pie that you've got, because there's not enough in the world. So it's this very sycophantic subtext to it. Like, nobody's safe. It doesn't matter if you're Julianne Moore at the top of your game or if you're some chick that's just rolled in on the bus. The chick that's rolled in on the bus is coming for you, Julianne, and literally in the end comes for her. It's like she thinks that she's helping her by giving this girl that's the burn victim, by giving her this job, but she's not really trying to help her. She's just finding someone else to abuse. And the way they talk about the help, the assistance, and it's just so gross. And it's like, there's no apology to that. It's not like, oh, and these are bad people.
No, I mean, that can backfire if a film is moralistic, but I would say that there doesn't seem to be any contrast, does there? And it doesn't seem to be a particularly compassionate portrait. It didn't feel tragic. So that's why, I was struggling what words to use for the alternative to an expose, and I almost said celebratory, but it doesn't feel celebratory either. But I just wonder, the more I've looked into Hollywood, the more I agree with your estimation. There's some very dark and damaged people who are bent on, passing on their own trauma to others, and that one of the things I've observed that they do is they make films that celebrate their own depravities. In these subtle ways. Yes,
and what it's doing is it's indoctrinating people into believing that that's normal, that that's a normal way to behave. People look at shows like The Kardashians or like The Simple Life when Paris Hilton had a show, and those things become aspirational. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to be this numbed out girl that all I care about is my makeup and being on the phone all the time. There's no real connection between anyone. It's not about creating good art. It's not about expressing something that is going to elevate the consciousness of the viewer. It's showing this deep, depraved world that they all swim in, and it's almost co-signing on that, saying like, this is okay, like this is the way it is. I think all roads always lead back to the government with me, Jason. But one thing that you have to also understand is that a lot of the people that live and work in the Hollywood system do have government connections, like family that works in the CIA, and now this person is the number one box office draw, and you look back in his personal history, it's like, oh yeah, his mom is a CIA agent, she works for the White House. So it's not just like, no one gets into that world accidentally, and you don't get into that world without some level of sacrifice. Either someone in your close family is going to die, or you're going to have to somehow give up something in order to be there. And that's just the system that I saw.
So you're basing this on some personal experience as well? Or?
It's what I witnessed. It's what I was involved with from the periphery. I wasn't willing to do the things that I was asked to do. Someone asked me at one point when I was working in that world, they said, women love you. You've been a sex worker. You've worked in a taxi dance hall. You should, get girls. Get girls? What are you saying? Like, be like a mama-san.
Like I was a procurer, you mean?
I was like, what? Yeah, we could throw parties, and like I could bring the guys that have the money, and you get the girls because they trust you. Jason, I'm thinking to myself, are you fucking kidding me? You're asking me to take a quality that I have, that women trust me, and use that against them to bring them in to sell you or rent you young women? Like, it's such a creepy, insidious way that they operate, and it seems so benign at the time when these things are being suggested, but you realize there's such a dark intent behind that. Now, do I think that there's groups that get together and make plans to do this stuff? I think there's a lot of ways to control the masses. I think there's a lot of ways to indoctrinate people, and I think you can do it subconsciously. You can influence people by creating these situations and showing them that these situations are acceptable and they're okay. I was dating someone who was very much in the Hollywood system. He is on the #1 show in the world right now. And he told me about these weird parties he would go to. He said, yeah, I went to this one party. It was like hundreds of Japanese girls. They were all wearing men's underwear and covered in blood. Now, this is a Hollywood party. Like, what the fuck is that about? Like, that's the weirdest masquerade ball I've ever heard about. Like, it's just being, again, and people are so desperate to get in, to be part of that, that they will literally do anything. They'll cover themselves in blood and walk around naked because they want to get one step closer to that path, to making it, whatever the fuck making it makes or means to them. So it's like, that's the thing that you start to see. And if you're not complicit in that, or if you're not compliant, then you're out. Like, they don't want people to out them or to expose them. It's this very creepy way of showing you what they're really doing and then saying, well, that's fictitious. That's really not what's going on. But it is, there is this level of bragging or saying, like, look what we can get away with. We can take these kids and throw them in the Hollywood system or in the Disney system, suck them dry, pimp them out, do whatever the fuck they want, and you buy the tickets, and you go to Disneyland, and you buy the products, and we've sold you this kid. And so then it becomes this indoctrination of little girls being objectified sexually, of young boys being objectified sexually, and we are witnessing this shit happening, and no one's going, wow, this is weird. Like, why are we putting full makeup on little kids and parading them around? Who the fuck is this for? So I think that that's the thing that makes me feel confused by Bruce, is that I don't feel like he's exposing something and trying to say this is bad or this is wrong. I think he's exposing something and just reporting, like, hey, this is what's going on. Brothers and sisters are married. There's incestuous relationships between people. People get beaten and murdered and, you know, randomly die. And yeah, that's just what happens. You know, and there's no sense of the onus falling on anyone or the responsibility that studios should have or these agents or managers should have. No, it's just like, if you're willing to sell yourself, we're willing to buy.
Do you think that this is going to have to be my last question, so we'll probably end on a cliffhanger, but do you think there's a consistency then between that kind of Hollywood amorality, which is, as you're saying, very, I mean, much more than just amoral. I mean, it's really, everything is permitted, kind of through the looking glass, inverted morality. Is there a consistency or continuum between that and Castaneda's sorceress magical view that has a whole different context for all this, and that morality is just completely out the window?
Yes, because what both systems are selling you is that if you respond negatively to this, if something internally tells you that it's wrong, then that's your ego. That's you. It has nothing to do with the fact that this is fucked up. It's no. It's the lens that you're viewing it through that's wrong. And you should be detached enough. You should love people unconditionally enough to let them sleep with whoever they want, to let them do whatever they want, and still be connected with that person. And so I think it's a form of indoctrination. We're selling these ideas to people, giving them the idea that this is the norm and this is okay to be like this. And the reality is that we all internally know we should all have a compass that says a movie is a movie. That's fictitious. That's something that I'm seeing on the screen. I don't need to go apply that to my daily life. But if you keep showing images of women being raped, of children being raped, of children being sacrificed, of all of these horrible things, there is a level of the brain, a neural pathway that develops where you become immune to that. It's like you're deadened or desensitized. I watch Family Guy sometimes, and it horrifies me, the things that he's exposing about Hollywood, because he's really saying, like, this is the world we live in. This is the shit that's going on, and people laugh and they think it's hilarious and they think it's twisted, but to me it's like, if you really want to know what's going on in the world, that's really the show. That's the type of show you should be watching, because this is a guy who's got power and he's got influence, and he's showing you stuff that's happening right now as we speak, and it's really more accurate than I think anyone really wants to believe it is. But when you get in there, you see, wow, this stuff isn't, like, this is really going on.
Yeah, I don't know that show. I suppose I'll have to at least Google it. Whether I will have the stomach for watching it, I don't know. Anyway, let's round up. That was a really punchy place to end on, and it means that I'm probably going to have to speak to you again if you're willing, because I didn't know we were going to get into inside Hollywood dirt, and that, of course, is my primary area of interest. So,
well, I would love to talk to you about my Harvey Weinstein connection.
Okay.
I would love to talk to you more about my Hollywood experiences. I worked for many years in that world, and I would love to share those stories with you, because I think that the only way that we're ever going to deal with any of this shit is shining light in these dark corners, and people really need to be exposed for what they're doing, and I think that's the only way that it's ever going to stop.
Changes in the heart, change with the times. Strangers in the night, pass up and downtown. Changes in your soul, they happen all the time.
That is the end of this week's podcast conversation with Hunter Muse. I'm going to be on the road. I'm making these podcasts ahead of time because I'm traveling. So by the time this airs, in fact, I will be on the road, I believe, or just about to be, going to Europe, Finland, and doing the otherworldly, alter-dimensional thing. But I'll try and keep these podcasts racked up in my absence, keep you all in the loop. This is, anyway, Jasun Horsley at the Liminalist, the podcast between horticulture.com. Trucking on.
Changes in the night, pass up and downtown. Changes in your soul, they happen all the time. Changes in the heart, change with the times. All the little sins, all the letdowns and wins, the things you begin with, the things that you end with. Changes in the heart, change with the times. Changes in the stars, change with the night. Strangers in the heart, stay up until light. Dangers in your soul, they motion to the stars. Changes in the heart, change with